Namaste. Today we are with Gautam, who is a spiritual publisher, and he's had a background in advertising as well for many decades. And I would like to interview you, Gautam, on your spiritual journey and your working journey and how they sort of have, you know, intertwined into each other.
Yes.
And I feel it'll offer devotees a very unique perspective because, from the vantage point Gautam has had, you have met many masters, you have met many teachers, you have met many devotees. And, working, having a busy work life with your responsibilities, amidst all of that, living the teaching. Uh, so I feel this would be a very unique thing if we can probe into it so devotees can get certain things from it.
Yes, very true, Nick, because my own teacher would say that work is a beautiful space to practice spiritual teachings because you deal with all sorts of people. We had to deal with suppliers, clients, colleagues at work, seniors, juniors, and it's fascinating, because everything is about relationships and getting along with people and getting work done. And you can see how deep a spiritual teaching is absorbed in you only when you are out there in the world and not sitting in a cave. So yes, it has been a tremendous journey, a tremendous gift, and one I would love to share because of all that I have learned from it. And many instances, many incidents might come up which, have different aspects of learning to them. And I will never forget Sri Aurobindo's words. You see, he said that regarding karma yoga, meditation is all fine because that's an internal journey. But what about meditation in daily living? When you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with work, that is also meditation. You cannot exclude the external. It is as relevant, if not more, than the internal. Why? Because every relationship is a reflection of yourself, ultimately. You see? So yes, it has been fascinating. And my journey began actually from the shift from advertising to publishing. And I clearly remember when that happened was, my mother had but had drawn her spiritual experiences of awakening. And we wanted to share it with people who were going through similar experiences. It was like a roadmap of Kundalini awakening, and a lot of books are there on the subject, but this was a visual journey because she saw the process of awakening. So that is when the thought came that we should bring this out as a book, and we went to various publishers. And many of them liked the book, but given that the drawings were in color, they asked us, please give us the money to publish it. So then I thought to myself that I have an ad agency and we've been doing brochures for our clients, color brochures, so it must be similar. So rather than give someone else the money, let us do it ourselves, which we did. And which turned out to be quite a big blunder, if I may say, because it was a different ball game. Yes. You see, printing a book was very different from a brochure. Yes. And we didn't have that knowledge. Yes. So we were also taken advantage of in the process. We were charged a higher fees for various activities related to that. When the book was ready and we went to bookstores, especially the more premium bookstores, they loved it because it was a color production, it was well presented and highly priced. So they kept five copies. And I remember I went to one distributor and he said, Arey beta, ek copy se kuch nahi hoga. When you have 100 titles, you come back to us. So I was very discouraged. The bookstores which took the books called us and said, send us 5 more copies because those 5 copies sold. Yes. I was very grateful to God and I said, all right, but can you give me the money for the first 5 copies? And that money never came.
Okay.
You see, so there were various challenges.
Yes.
But it convinced me that I would not do publishing again because it was so difficult.
Yes.
But then one thing led to another, and we started publishing more books.
Yes.
And there were various learnings here. One was, why did I continue despite it being so hard?
Yes.
One day, while the advertising business was still there, I was walking past the office reception and one elderly lady had come in with a big cake. And I overheard a conversation with the receptionist. And she told my receptionist, she said that so-and-so book changed my life. The author seems to be a foreigner. I don't know where he stays. I found this address on the book and I have come to say thank you. When I saw that, I was very moved. Because I said that if one person's life can change, and the person is so moved that she comes with a cake, finds her address, says thank you. I said in my advertising business, if a client was happy, they didn't say thank you, they just paid your bills on time. That was it. There was nothing beyond that. So I remember when I told once when I met Eckhart, I think it was in 99 or 2000, and I said, you know, Eckhart, the advertising business is losing its grip on me. He gave me a 2-word reply. He said, thank God. Because it was all about selling products to people which they don't need, having them identify with objects and aspiring. Advertising has its valid role, no doubt, but it was something I was not resonating with anymore.
Yeah.
You see? So that is how the journey began.
You were also blessed by a master. I think it was Gagangiri Maharaj who blessed you that you must do this work, the spiritual publishing.
Yes, because when he saw my mother's work, which I'm coming back to simply because it was the first book, he made it clear that this had to be shared and it had to be done.
Okay.
And he said, you do it. So I kind of felt that, you know, this is meant to be. So very early on, Times of India was doing a big piece on spiritual business. So they called me for a telephonic interview. So the lady asked me, she said, can you tell me what is your business plan? So I let out a laugh and I said, only God knows. So she said, excuse me? I said, I don't have a business plan. She was shocked. You don't have a business plan? I said, I really don't. Things have just happened this way and I'm going to follow it and see the course it takes. So she was not, that interview didn't happen because there was no material to print, you see. But I truly believe that what is meant to happen will happen. What is not meant to happen won't happen. So through this journey of spiritual book publishing, as you said, I met beautiful masters. I met those who were not masters, who claimed to be masters, and it enriched my journey. It was really, through this business, I got closer to my own spiritual teacher because I helped him in editing and publishing his books. And his books were not as popular as, let's say, Eckhart's books, some of which we have published. So I would tell him that thanks to Eckhart's books, we can publish yours. You see, everything is so connected.
True, true.
Everything is connected. So it has been a fascinating experience.
You've also had quite a few ups and downs. Like, you know, you had mentioned once in your advertising days, someone had refused to pay you and you were forced almost to sit in their office and read a book there for the whole day till they could make that payment.
Yes, you see, that was actually a very interesting episode. A big advertising client was not paying us and we needed the money. Now, I was all of 22 or 23. I had a staff of 30 and all of them were older than me. So I was really in a spot all around. And being the quiet type, I could not go and barge in and ask for my money. So what I decided to do was take the fattest book on my bookshelf. At that time, I was reading Robert Ludlum or something. So I picked up his fattest book, which I had read. I said, but they should know that I'm serious. So I went to their reception, met the secretary, and I said, look, this money is owed to me. I will not survive without it. So I'm going to sit here till I get the money. So the owners of the business didn't come out of their cabins to see me. For the first day, I sat morning to evening reading my book. Second day, they must have taken pity or felt bad because I sat there. They offered me tea and all, I must say. But somehow it worked. They said, look, it's very embarrassing for us to see you sit here. The staff wonders what you are doing. So, we'll give you your money. And I said, I won't leave till at least a part payment is made. So like that, the money came out. But I realized that what was in my capacity to do, I could do only that. I knew deep down that I would not get this money because my nature was not to force it out or pull it out. But thankfully it came. But I was not so fortunate elsewhere. The advertising agency eventually folded because we had a huge bad debt. That money didn't come. And we had a general manager who was in cahoots with this client and who also ran away with money and did things on the side which should not have been done. So that was also meant to happen. And that closed down the ad business. People told me that, put a case on him, fight in the courts. The lawyer said, you must go to court. This is wrong. We can prove it. But I asked myself, and this is what many people don't do, is it my nature? And the Indian courts means going to court for 20 years. Is it really worth it? Do I have that personality? I don't have that personality. So I decided not to go to court. People said, you're escaping. You should not escape like this, that it's your nature and all. But truly, I did feel that it was just not in my nature. And I knew that what was meant to happen happened, and destiny would take its course as far as he was concerned. And I was so grateful that probably after 25 years of that incident, I came across a book, Silence of the Heart by Robert Adams, where Robert Adams said, don't waste your time in courts. I'm not saying this applies for everyone. I'm referring to my situation that I did not have the bandwidth. I didn't have the nature. And I felt a comfort level when I read that.
Generally on the path, one tends to avoid conflict. In fact, even Sai Baba would mention this often, that don't get into conflict and argument. That hurts me as well. So it is not that you're escaping events, but where there is confrontation. Like for example, this is a very a tendency on the spiritual path. As you go inward, you will avoid things where there is confrontation. So this was a good living example in your case.
And why? Because it disturbs peace.
True.
Nothing is as sacredly held in terms of an opinion that it was earlier. So you don't want to engage because conflicts are points of view which are at conflict. You are no longer attached to your point of view. So you tend to walk away from conflicts. You tend to be less involved in drama. I met a clairvoyant in the UK many years ago. Lovely man. So he said, Gautam, the difference between you and me is, supposing we are walking by a pond, and the pond looks like it could be a nice one and could be a tricky one, murky. He said, I am someone who will just jump in, and you are someone who will say, is it really worth jumping in? And you'll walk away. It is one's nature. If it is one's nature to avoid conflict, one avoids conflict, you see. So this is something which I have seen pays off huge dividends. To avoid conflicts does not mean to escape them. Say what you have to, but to say the same thing 100 times is not needed, which many of us do. You see, so that's what I saw. Thanks to advertising, I had these experiences. Thanks to the business folding up, I realized when things are not meant to be, they are finished. There's no point pointing fingers, accusing people. It was meant to happen. So there were big lessons learned. When we are suffering the process, we don't see it that way. But in retrospect, to even see that is a big gift. And this is what took me along in the journey of book publishing. I'll tell you, many people would criticize masters and say, don't see this one, don't see that one. So the more the criticism, the more I would go. Because I realized it was their point of view. If I was to be neutral and objective, I must reach my own conclusions. So you see, what happens is when people criticize, they get stuck at the level of personality. Everyone has flaws, you see. So one is not looking at that aspect. One is looking at the bigger picture. What is being offered? Is it of value to people? You know, so you no longer operate on just the dynamic of my personal likes and dislikes. There may be a master considered very arrogant, and he is arrogant. But if it is clearly seen that that is the aspect of personality, but yet when he speaks about a certain yoga or a certain kriya or whatever it is, and he is brilliant, that is of tremendous value. So one learns to discriminate.
You know, Gautam, on this, you've been a publisher, you've met many masters. One thing I have also met, of not many, but a few masters, I have felt all of them have ways to even shake devotees up, which might be intentional. Like they may do something which I can't even say it's their personality, but sometimes to, check why the devotee has come, or to break their ego, they may do certain things that will go against the conditioning of the devotee. For example, I think it was Ram Baba who had come to meet Sai Baba, and he saw Baba having onion, and he said, what will I learn from him when he's eating this? And Baba read his mind and told him, only those who can process this, they can have it, and then he was taken aback.
Right.
So, the conditioned mind has an idea of a master or what is a master, and it wants to see that on the outside.
Right.
Whereas the master can break your idea or concept and do some sort of a leela.
Yeah.
But I would say, is that then not, it might not be their personality, it might just be for that particular case.
It could be that also. It could very well be that also. We wouldn't know. Like even Anand Mahima used to do the same thing. Someone with a big ego who thinks himself important or herself would come and she'd say, oh, go and clean the bathrooms or whatever the utensils are. So it's actually very strange how this works. But the point is that, you see, what we do is we mix up the messenger with the message. Now the teachings are eternal. The teachings have come from ancient times through the scriptures. You see, so it is the teaching. When you receive a letter, in the olden days we had the postman coming. Do you just shake hands with the postman and send him off? Or did you take the letter and read what was in the letter? That is the message. You see, so what we do is we mix up the personality with the message. So that there's a distinction here. So I learned that because I met so many masters, so many yogis, so many psychics, so many astrologers. It's just, it happened, one was not seeking them. It was like that. And I saw, it was so clear that what is it that draws me to this person? What doesn't draw me? There was none of that battle with liking some, not liking the other. There was one master who loved criticizing my master. And I felt I was not reacting because I just knew this is the way he was. He was critical of all the masters, so this is the way he was. It has nothing to do with me. Someone said, oh, you didn't defend your guru. But I didn't feel the need because he's entitled to his point of view. What am I going to defend? I'm not here to change his point of view. So let him say what he wants. Now, someone else would have walked away if it was unbearable. It was not an unbearable criticism, so I was there. So it's all very relative. You see, there's no black and white. But what I learned is that generally, spiritual egos are far bigger than normal egos. I've seen it not only in masters, but disciples around them.
I remember having this discussion with you in person once where many devotees who feel they are ahead on the path want to give advice which is not asked for.
Yes.
And try and impose their views on others.
Yes.
Maybe while we're at it, we can probe into some examples.
Yeah, because they think they know what is best. Whereas my teacher would say, never give advice unless you ask for it, because you don't know what is best. You see, sometimes it did happen. I'll give you a classic example. One very big organization in South India many years ago, it split. Right through the middle, it split. Now, what happened? I was at work and I got a call. I got a call from the faction which split up. Theirs was the first call I received, and the lady said, Gautam, this has happened. And I just thought I'd inform you that we are no longer associated with the master. So I said, fair enough, you must be having your reasons, and thank you for calling me. So she said, yes, we would just wanted you to know. I don't know why me, because I had no special thing, but maybe they thought being a spiritual book publisher and all that. After 2 hours, I got a call from the master's faction that this is what has happened, and they were concerned, and they asked me, what did I think? And I said, look, and this, thankfully, I learned a big lesson from my auditor. When I was 21, my father passed away when I was 14. When I was 21 and had to take charge of the ad agency, I was full of fear that how will I, a kid, be able to handle this? And he said, look, Gautam, organizations are separate from individuals, and individuals are indispensable or not is a matter of destiny. But as an auditor, I can tell you, nobody is indispensable. And then he told me, to my shock at that time, your father died and the ad agency continued in spite of that. That proves my point that nobody is indispensable. If the organization is meant to go on, it will go on. And Nikhil, I found myself saying the same words to this ashram head. I said, look, whatever has happened has happened. They may walk away with half the following, but if your ashram, if your institution is meant to survive, it will survive. And you will not believe it. It is survived and it is flourishing till today, and the other faction has come back. Simple life lessons, because nobody is indispensable. And back to Ramana Maharshi's words, what is meant to happen will happen. So that was a pretty amazing thing for me to see, that both sides called me, and what I said was common sense, So that was one of those incidents on the spiritual journey.
That you mentioned, that Ramana Maharshi said what is meant to will happen. When I had last met you in Bombay, you mentioned that once recently the sales tax came to your publishing company or the other company and gave you a big fat bill of like 18 lakhs to pay overnight.
Yes.
For which you had done no wrong. I think the auditor over the years, it was an error which was beyond your control.
Yes.
And now I was amazed to see your acceptance of the situation, and there was no ill will towards the auditor, and you tried doing what you could. But if you could speak, because I felt that was a very important aspect of the teaching being lived.
You see, when you have early setbacks in life, I tell anyone who has faced loss in life, it will take you very far. Because then the second time you're hit, you don't feel the impact that much. In this case, what happened, we were not calculating the correct sales tax based on our sales tax consultant, who obviously misled us unintentionally. He just didn't understand the business. Now, the sales tax department, what they do is they randomly do scrutiny of companies, and we came under scrutiny. Now, when they came, they said not that you haven't paid, which you should have paid, but the system, the government system is you are charged interest and penalty also for the past years. So that became a huge amount. Now, of course, it was for a small company like ours a huge shock. But I was amazed because this group of officers, they were so nice. I was taken aback. They came into my cabin and they told me, they said, look, we can see when people are evading tax and when they have just filed it wrongly. We can see it on their face when we talk to them. And they felt so bad. I said, look, we didn't know. This is what our sales tax consultant has told us to file. We've been filing. They even fixed a meeting and they called the sales tax consultant to my office and they asked him, what have you done? Because of you, this man is suffering. So I was very moved, and I knew that that money was meant to go. If it was not meant to go, it would not have gone. So my mind did not create a drama and stories about it. Do you know what actually happened? In spite of this huge loss, the sales tax consultant sent me his bill. That is human nature. And I paid it. That is human nature. So this teaching took me very far. That yes, it hit me hard, the loss, but I did not lose sleep because I knew it was meant to go. How and why and when is irrelevant in the larger scheme of things. And I must say, I've had other beautiful experiences. I've had an experience where once my auditor called me and said, one income tax officer wants to meet you. And I got very scared because meeting means there's some trouble. You've done something wrong in your returns or filing or whatever. And I said, no, I don't want to meet. I don't know what to say in front of such people. You please go. He said, we normally go, but somehow he said, I want to meet Gautam. So I said, no, nothing doing. After 2 days, my auditor called me again and he said, look, he really wants to meet you. So I said, I am not going. So my auditor was in a fix. So he said, okay, I'll tell him that. But beyond a point, I don't know also what to do. So then my auditor called me the third time and said, he'll come to your office. I said, I'm in big trouble. Who's heard of income tax officers coming to people's offices like that, And a small organization like ours, I really wondered what could be so wrong. And that man came. My auditor didn't accompany him because he had to fly, so that made me very nervous. That man came, sat in front of me and said, I only wanted to meet you to tell you that when your books came to me, I said, oh, I know Yogi Impressions. I've read so many of their books. So I just wanted to thank you for publishing. You see, and it was a big lesson to me that all these preconceived ideas and notions one comes with, when the reality is completely different. And I had such a beautiful conversation with this man. And it was a terminal illness which had brought him onto the spiritual path. So he was telling me his story. And his parting line was one I will never forget. He said, all I want is my life to be just a comma. I don't want any disturbance beyond that. I don't want any shor sharaba, any tamasha, being noticed, being out there. I just want my life to be a gentle comma in the middle of a sentence. And that really touched me. So these are the gifts. I was gifted such incidents also, which would not have happened in the general course of business. More so because one was in spiritual book publishing. One has so many instances, it's just incredible. I remember one book in our early years we were doing, one manuscript came which I really liked. And I said we'll publish it, and then the author turned around and said, oh, there's another publisher interested in the same manuscript. So I said, oh, bloody hell, maybe we won't be able to do it. I said, anyway. So I said, now it's for you to decide, because normally a new author would love to be published. Now she had 2 publishers saying yes. So then she called and she said, I decided to get the book published by you. So I said, what made you change your mind and be clear that you want us to publish it? She said, oh, I had a dream. I dreamt that outside the publisher's window is a big tree. So she had called me once and asked me, is there a tree outside your window? And I said, yes. And I said, what a bizarre thing this woman is asking, and it slipped my mind. And at that time, the office I had, there was a tree outside my window. So this incident proved to me that, let's say, publishing a book, it is pure destiny. If it was meant to happen, she had to have a vision of a tree outside her publisher's window, so it came to me, which is no guarantee that the book would sell well, by the way.
Correct.
That's the other thing.
Absolutely,
You know, we
yeah.
think that, wow, God has done this Leela.
Yes.
So this is going to be a bestseller. It was not a bestseller. All it proved was that we had to publish the book. But we think that, wow, this is a sign of God, you
Correct.
know,
That is the
now it's
tendency
going
of
to
the
be.
mind
That
to-
is what it
Correct.
does. And thankfully, I've had enough experiences where that has not happened. But fascinating, you see.
You know, I would like to cover that incident, what I call the Muji tea incident, where we were in Thiruvannamalai together. And this was when I was very new with you as well. And we went to Muji's satsang and to meet, not the satsang, we had gone to his home to meet him the first day, and they offered us tea. And the second day also we were going, I'm not sure if you remember. And we all went to one cafe before and we had tea there. And I said, no, I don't want, because we'll go to Muji's like we did yesterday and I'll have tea over there. And I remember distinctly you looked at me and you said, okay. You know, it was like that sort of a look. And later when we left the place and we were walking, we got a call midway and they said, today's meeting is cancelled. Please come tomorrow morning at whatever time. And then you told me, you said, listen, look back, you had made this assumption. And that was a pivotal point, however simple it may have seemed, where I saw the relativity of thought, the assumptive nature of one's thoughts. And I truly realized I don't know anything, you know, so how can I make an assumption?
Right.
So it was very simple,
Yeah.
but it really was very profound.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one should have tea when one is offered it, because you may not get it again.
Yeah, that is one. And yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. I remember once we had gone to ashram of very big scholar of the Gita and Vedanta and all, you know, and I was quite looking forward to it. So we were, you know, very courteously invited to have lunch with him, me and my friend. And it was great because all his students were there in the cafeteria and all that, and we were taken to a table where he joined us. And from the start of that lunch to the end of the lunch, he was criticizing each and every spiritual teacher in India. And there was no asking, where are you from, what do you do, or no sharing of anything of import, but a barrage of critique. And I was like, even this happens? I was so taken aback, you know. And then you won't believe it, a few days later, I got a call that he had to have umpteen stitches across his jaw. Some incident had happened. And I was not sure whether the two were connected or not. Possibly they weren't, I don't know. But it just struck me that even a spiritual teacher of prominence and eminence, the whole 45 minutes was talking ill of others. Now, you know, you could say, was he testing me and all? It didn't matter to me, you see. But I just felt that that was the content of our conversation. That is what it was meant to be. But even that I saw on the spiritual path that this happens. And it's amazing because there is criticism abounding, you know. Someone else I met, a friend, was critical of the big gurus. Very critical, went on and on and on. And I just asked her, I said, you know, in the South, there are gurus who are no more, who've done such tremendous work with setting up hospitals, free hospitals for the needy, setting up electrification and water in villages. And maybe there was a bit of irritation in me or what. I said, you know, if you have done even something like that on a very small scale, that's so beautiful, rather than just criticizing these masters and all that. And that made her even more upset. Now, how dare you tell me this? You see, because a mind which is critical will not take any form of criticism on itself, but is happy to criticize others. So I've seen this also, that there's a lot of this abounding all around, and these have been learning points for me. That's quite fascinating that we tend to focus on only the negatives. We don't focus on the positives.
I think one of the masters, I'm not sure if it was Ramakrishna Dev, he said the difference between man and God is such that if man makes one mistake, another man will look only at that. But, if he does one thing good, God will look at that. Out of, say, 99 mistakes and one. And I feel one can learn quite a lot by that change in attitude.
Yeah, it is the attitude which is the main thing.
Yeah, where you look at something good and you're grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crucial.
I think my mom would tell me this often, that to every mother, her child is the most beautiful. So, I remember it when I see someone and it may be difficult and maybe everyone is criticizing them for what they have done or not done. But to that one's mother,
True.
it is...
True.
Yeah, so that advice has saved me of a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Yes, that's so true.
And then one other bit, Gautam, which I feel would be very unique from your perspective is that you've met so many masters, pseudo-masters, and so many people on the path. Then there is this tendency that when one goes to a group, a new gathering, or they want to sort of convert you and pull you in. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that.
Many times, yes.
So, how do you sort of put your boundaries there?
See, I tend to have a more benevolent approach to this, that, because of their love for their master and teaching, they want to share the master and the teaching with others. Yes. So sometimes they tend to be pushy, yes. And people don't like to be pushed, you see. So with me, of course, because I'm not someone who would really react to the pushiness, but just brush it aside, it's okay. But it is also, I think, something to be looked at for these devotees themselves. This need to bring others into the fold means not to accept that everyone is on their journey home, everyone has the master destined for them, and if that master happens to be your master, they will come in. You see, that is why even someone like Satya Sai Baba, I remember a book in which he is berating his main people that please don't go about canvassing to get people for my talk, because they will come if they are destined to. God knows best. Yeah. All it needs is an announcement, that's it. You don't have to go out on the streets and coerce people to come, which is happening a lot. That is happening a lot, unfortunately. But see, I think Ramakrishna said something so beautiful, that when the flower blooms, the bees come. Nothing has to be done. It's as simple as that. So it is a very big, and it's not only a big learning curve for the devotees who are doing this, but you see, it is something which one has to learn from, because you cannot force the hand of destiny. Yes, if you have been impacted by your own master, that spontaneous feeling is there to share the master with others. But beyond a point, if you ask me, that is violence, because you are trying to shape the hand of destiny. You have to trust that if the master's teaching is to reach out, it will reach out. Whether or not you do that extra effort is really not relevant. Do what you can to share the teaching, but not to convert people to the teaching. Many times, I've been offered mantra diksha, I've been offered various things, or messages from the afterlife have come and said that now actually your master is so and so, it will unfold in due course. But be where your feet are right now. That is the biggest lesson. It's quite funny. But yet, it does show the love they have for the master and the teaching. Yeah. So that cannot be discounted. True. And I have enjoyed masters who are light-hearted and are humorous. I think those are great qualities. Yes. Humor. Yes. That seriousness should not be there. True. Like I remember reading Meher Baba, what he would do. He was very naughty. Yes. So when they were going by train, he would tell one devotee that, oh, I don't want the wind coming in, you put the window down. And that devotee would put the window down, and then when he wasn't looking, he'd tell the other devotee, you put that window up, I want the wind. And so then they would get into a fight. Baba wants this, Baba wants this. They are fighting with each other, and he would have a laugh, you know. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
Or when it was a very crowded train, and they were coming to a crowded platform where like hundreds of people were wanting to get onto the train. So they asked Baba, what do we do? You know, it'll be too crowded here. So he said, don't worry, just get me a white chadar. So what they did was, when the train approached the station, Baba lay down there and they put the chadar on him and started wailing and crying. So nobody got onto that bogie. No, they were shit scared. So, and then the train left, and they happily then enjoyed the rest of the time to themselves. I think it's such fun, you know, this lightheartedness. That for me is a big sign. Humor is actually very important.
I think the master there would be exempt from any karmic replications. But other people, if they try and do that, yeah, don't try that at home. Yeah.
So that's, I do enjoy good humor also, because life is already so serious. You know, someone who's light-hearted, a master who's able to see the lighter side of life, it's a beautiful aspect to be exposed to.
This series of conversations could actually be a long one, because there's so many aspects of your work life and the spiritual path that, you know, we would probe in. So I hope in time we can continue this series.
I hope so too.
The journeys on the office desk, let's call it that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so I would want to probe into this in the series. Thank you, Gautam, for your time. Thank you.